and Joe smoothly block her, put a gentle hand on her shoulder, and bend to whisper something to her. She burst into tears, which was a bit remarkable. She seemed to be the only one who was actually sorry to see the old man go. The dry-eyed wife certainly had never displayed a speck of feeling in all the time Bryn had spoken with her, and wasn't showing any now. Neither did the children, both in their teens, who looked bored. At least they weren't texting. The prayer finished, the priest walked to offer his, probably unneeded, comfort to the wife and kids, and right on cue the soft music that Bryn had arranged for began to play, signaling the end of the public gathering. She'd cautioned the cemetery employees that she wouldn't tolerate any jumping of the gun, and she was pleased to see that they were still hanging well back, pretending to be gardeners until the time came for the actual burial. There was another tent erected across the way. She knew they were pressed on their schedule to get the next funeral ready, and she was sympathetic to their need to get things moving, but still. She was a great believer in respect. Joe had engaged the mistress in tearful conversation and was walking her away from the graveside. The woman might have been planning a dramatic flinging herself over the coffin moment, or at the very least a shrieking catfight with the more legally bereaved. Mrs. Raines was already heading for the limousine that would take her home. The mistress was too far away now for any effective dramatics. Deprived of any other possible entertainment, the assembled mourners, not that Mr. Raines had many, were scattering fast. Bryn caught up with Mrs. Raines and offered her last condolences, which the widow accepted with a distant, frosty confidence. She was already basking in the soft, warm glow of being a rich woman of means, motive, and opportunity. Poor man. His mistress, for all her tears, probably wouldn't mourn him much longer than it took to pawn whatever he'd bought her. Bryn's mind wandered off into lurid pulp magazine plots of poisoning, evil widows, sinister mistresses, eager to inherit children, but truthfully she had no reason to suspect any foul play. It was just something to do to pass the time, standing in the cool wind, watching the living depart and leave the place to the dead. She didn't accept herself from that description. In truth, Bryn was just as dead as Mr. Raines. She just wore it a whole lot better. Bryn finally nodded to the cemetery staffers, who with quick, efficient movements stripped off the flour covering on the casket and began the less-than-photogenic process of the actual burial. They dropped the sides of the tent for the mechanics of it. A third uniformed worker began folding up the chairs and picking up fallen programs from the astroturf that had been laid down around the tent. While she was watching that happen, Joe Fideli came back across the carefully manicured lawn. There was still something a little intimidating about him, no matter how much tailoring might have gone into his very nice suit. Maybe it was the shaved head, or the way he moved, but he had a hell of a lot of presence. Made a pretty good funeral director, though, and an even better bodyguard. "Thanks for that," she said to Joe, and he nodded. "She looked like she was powering up for a full-on drama explosion," he said. "So, that's lunch then." The death business, Bryn thought, was so strange. It was all about emotion and pain and stage management, and then suddenly, lunch. "You know," she said, as she and Joe walked toward the Davis Funeral Home sedans, "it occurs to me that what we do is pretty much like being wedding planners, just with a much unhappier ending." He smiled. "Oh, I don't know. Depends on the wedding," he said. "I've seen some that might have been better off as funerals. You think people are capable of mayhem here? You should see what they get up to with a little champagne under their belts." Joe had a unique perspective on mayhem, Bryn thought. He might work for her as a funeral director, and he was a good one, but that was hardly his main vocation. She'd never met anyone who was quite so comfortable with violence. And considering she herself had been in the army, that was saying something. She strongly suspected he had a background in special forces, Rangers, SEALs, something secretive and highly trained. For all that, he was a nice guy.